Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Episode 315, Inspired by Wal-Mart Edition. And before we get to that, just want a few administrative things to share with you. The first one is, hey, if you haven't been on the website lately, I would encourage you to do so, because there's a few really good resources on there. 3 of them, in fact. One is the Fly Fishing Library, and so here is a collection of books that I have given some sort of comment on, whether it's a full review or it is just a little bit of a feature or even an interview with the author. That's all in there, and the way it's organized now is it's thumbnails of all the books. If you're looking at the desktop, it's like a whole tile screen of books. If you're on your phone and you scroll through, you get them one at a time. Click on them. It'll give you a link to whatever content that I have on the website about that particular book. There's lots. I mean, I think we're almost at 100. And then there is a fly shop directory. And I think this is the only thing like it online. It was just a lot of work to get it dialed in. And it is a listing of true fly shops. Now, I know there's lodges that have fly shops. I know there's guides that will sell stuff out of the back of their truck. I know there's big box stores that have really, really high quality fly selections and fly focused employees. But this is an assortment of fly shops. I think it's over 400 now that you can go and click your state, and it'll take you down to a listing alphabetically by fly shop name. Certainly there'd be a better way to do it, but this is the peak of my technical prowess, so that's what you get. And the last thing that I wanted to point out on the website that's worth looking at is just the search bar. Somebody actually asked me recently, where's the search bar on your website? And I think it's a very good question. If you're on the desktop, you scroll down and it's past the last few weeks' post. And if you're on the phone version, you go all the way down, you scroll for quite a bit, and then it pops up. And if you put in any sort of word, you're going to get probably something about it. I mean, you put in brown trout, there'll be something. You put in waders, there'll be something. And you'll get podcasts, you'll get reviews, you'll get interviews. All those things are there. And so if you have only really utilized the podcast, first of all, thank you. That's great. I'm not, down on you for that. But there's so much more over at castingacross.com. Years and years, 9 years now, I believe. I think 9. Yeah, 9 years of content over on castingacross.com. And the other thing I just wanted to throw out there is if you want to reach out, if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you even have an accusation, Matthew at castingacross.com. Always happy to get some feedback, always happy to answer questions. Some of the most frequently asked questions that I get have to do with small stream fly rods and equipment for small stream fishing, have to do with fishing in the mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, things like that, as well as just general fly rod selection. I think those are kind of 3 of the wheelhouse aspects of fly fishing that folks perceive that I know a couple things about, and I would have to agree. So if it's that, or if it's anything else that I've touched on, or maybe if I haven't touched on, I'd love to hear. One of the reasons being, sometimes the most obscure seeming questions turn into great rabbit trails that generate a number of kinds of content on Casting Across. So I would absolutely encourage you to send that email, Matthew at castingacross.com. Now, for the meat of the podcast. Today I had a lunch meeting, and as I was leaving my lunch meeting, my lovely wife said, hey, we need some tray liners for paint trays. We're putting in some new bookshelves, and so she is making them a lovely shade of dark blue. Well, we ran out of the tray liners, and she said we need to pick some up. And so Home Depot was like 10 minutes away on the other side of the highway, and Walmart was right next to where I was. So I thought, well, I'm sure that Walmart has this. So I go in and navigate my way to the back of the relatively robust paint section at Walmart, particularly spray paint. And I found what looks to be some serviceable paint trays. You're wondering, what in the world does this have to do with fly fishing? Well, as I was making my way from the home goods section of the Walmart, I walked by their sporting goods section. Now, I haven't bought anything in the Walmart sporting goods section in quite a while. I think the last thing I bought was maybe some BBs for one of my boys' BB guns, maybe some Blaze Orange on a last minute, like, oh no, I need this to go out in the woods today kind of thing. But the first thing I saw was a Martin fly rod combo. And so I stopped. And the reason why I stopped was it was a fly rod right there in Walmart. And that's not a surprise. I know Walmart has fly fishing gear. But I stopped because I was thinking about the podcast at that moment, thinking about what am I going to talk about. And I saw this thing and I walked over to it. It was $19.95. And it came with a rod. It was a 3-piece rod. I think it was a 5/6 weight, both 5/6, 5-6, right? And there's a little plastic reel, and there was backing, there was line, and there was a leader, a tapered leader, and there was an assortment of flies. $20, which got me thinking. First of all, this is how I started fly fishing. I went to the Sports Authority, which is kind of like Dick's Sporting Goods in Northern Virginia. I think I've talked about this before. And I bought this exact kind of thing. That mine was not on a blister pack. This one, this Martin combo, was on a blister pack. You know, it's the cardboard sheet with the rod and then the plastic that's kind of formed over top of it. Mine was actually up on the rack, so it was a little more highbrow, not by much. I think I probably spent $30 for it back in the late 90s. Um, but I used that rod and reel. Well, I used that rod once because it snapped on my first trip out, but then I got a replacement and fished that one for quite a while. But that got me thinking. You know, I talk about rods that 500, 1,000, $1,500, and they're great. I'm not saying that they're not. But for a lot of folks who see fly fishing and they say, I want to give this a shot, this might be their first step into it. And what I'm saying, if that's you or if that's somebody you know, there's no shame in that. And here's why. That thick butted, foam gripped rod is going to catch as many fish as a $800 rod in the hands of a beginner. All right. That is a perfectly usable tool. One of the things that I have enjoyed doing as I've taught casting is I tell people to bring their rod with them, when they come to do casting instruction, whether I was doing it for work years ago or now I just do it for fun and helping people out with people who are wanting to learn how to fly fish. And I taught lots of teenagers back when I was running a conservation camp. And I would always say, bring your fly rod. And one of the amazing things is how well some of these rods cast. Some of these incredibly inexpensive, no-name fiberglass graphite combo rods, how well they cast. And the reason why is they're generally pretty responsive, they're quite flexible, and as a result, you're able to feel that line pull on that rod, and it helps you know when that line is loading that rod so you can make your cast. And so in some ways, I would rather somebody learn how to cast on a $20 Walmart rod than on a really high-end rod that is incredibly light, incredibly fast, and maybe isn't going to be as responsive for that person. We one time, a handful of us had a casting challenge using some kind of moderate, mid-grade rods and some cheap fly rods. And the cheap fly rods, they outperformed at the mid-range distance. They struggled in carrying that line for long casts, and they were so soft in the tip in particular that they were hard on those short casts, the 10 to 15 foot casts. But on that 30-foot range, they would load that rod and then they would shoot that line in a very, very efficient manner. So all of that to say, if that's the rod that you're still fishing with and you're listening to this, don't listen to me talk about all these $500, $700 fly rods and think that you aren't fishing, because you are fishing. If you're having fun and you're catching fish, then by all means, get after it. That reminds me of a guy that I knew that would fish on a pretty popular stream in Pennsylvania that I would fish very, very frequently when I lived there. And he had, first of all, he had a really nice truck, and he was certainly had enough money to do pretty well. But he had the most bargain basement loadout for fly fishing that you can imagine. His vest looked like it was made of the cheapest mesh that you can imagine. It was like net bag mesh. His waders looked plastic, and he had a big old fleece patch on his shoulder filled with the gaudiest, ugliest, bright reds and yellows. I mean, they look like the colors that you would see in like a bass or panfish bug assortment. But he had it on this trout stream, and he had this all black rod. I mean, it wasn't a cork handle, that's for sure. And he caught fish, and he caught lots of fish, and he seemed happy, and he was pleasant. And it just goes to show you that it's really, in a lot of situations, the angler more than it is the gear. So, yeah, I'm even looking back, and the few articles I've written about this week talks about the gear, talks about how important taking care of your gear is and making sure you're using the right gear and things like that. And that is all true, but that is on top of. That is gravy. That is frosting. Whatever your preferred analogy is, that is the next level from knowing how to fish. So a few things. First of all, I've wanted to write the article for quite a while about buying all of your gear at Walmart. And I'm sure that's been written before. I can almost guarantee it. I know people that have done that with hunting. I know that people have done that with camping. Actually, I have a friend that did it with camping, and he did fine. He was Ozark Trail top to bottom. I think his hiking boots were were name brand, but he went Walmart for everything else, and I think it cost him something like $250 to start from scratch. And he said it was totally fine. Fine. He was not very confident in this stuff lasting season after season after season, but for some stuff, it was totally great. The cookware, the some of the accessories that went into camping, it was great. And I would say the same thing is true with your Walmart or insert brand here, store brand stuff for fly fishing. Now, here's a few reasons why. First and foremost, there's some places that have a very robust fly fishing section at Walmart's. I've been places up in Maine, and I've been in Arkansas, and I have been in even in Pennsylvania, where their fly fishing assortment at Walmart was sufficient. I mean, they had all the flies you need. They had all the diameters of tippet within a certain range. They had a couple of different choices of rods, and then they had a couple of different types of fly line. And then if you do a little bit of digging, you can start to see that a lot of these things are coming out of the same factories and the same distributors that some of the kind of mid-grade fly fishing brands and even some of the high-end fly fishing brands, lower-end stuff is coming out of. There's only a handful of places that are rolling graphite blanks. And so there's a really, really good chance that you're getting the same graphite blank for $50 that you might be getting for $250. It just depends on the name that's on it, as well as the kind of the components that go into it that give you that wide swing in price. The same thing is true of fly line. Fly line is only being made in a handful of places, and it really is a relatively simple thing. And in my mind, there's good fly line and there's really good fly line. I haven't used a whole lot of bad fly line, but I'm an advocate of really good fly line. But if you want to spend $25 instead of $125, then you're going to be okay again for most situations and circumstances. So if you go to the big box store, whether that's Dick's Sporting Goods or Walmart or whatever it may be, so again, not the place that necessarily has the fly fishing section, not Cabela's, not Bass Pro, not Shields, not whatever, then you probably could outfit yourself pretty well. And more anecdotal evidence for this. There was a while where Orvis was actually labeling stuff for Walmart. I actually have some still. I think it's called Green Mountain. So Green Mountain was, I know Orvis had a Green Mountain reel, a Green Mountain vest, and some stuff like that they sold in their catalog back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And this was kind of like their entry level stuff. And then they used that, and I think I'm getting these details correct. They used that same name for stuff that they sold at Walmart. Now, again, I'm very confident that a little tube of floatant that says Orvis or says Orvis Green Mountain or says one of any other number of labels is probably coming out of the exact same factory. So for stuff like that, it's good or better. Are there some really, really high-end floatants that do some good stuff that separate it from the run-of-the-mill? Of course, but the run-of-the-mill is going to do just fine. So the same thing with leader material, right? I know a lot of guys who fish with the Stren, especially for bass and for other warm water fish, and they do just fine going to Walmart and buying a big spool of that. So a couple of kind of conclusions that are going to tail out this rant of mine about why it's okay to fish with gear from the big box store. Here's the first one. You can get your stuff there in a pinch. Don't feel like you have to go to the fly shop if you are in an emergency. Now, I'm not saying this to discourage you from going to a fly shop. I'm saying if you pull up to the river and you're getting out of the car and you realize you don't have whatever, you don't have polarized sunglasses, you don't have spool tippet, you forgot your reel for some or something like that, and it's 45 minutes or an hour to a fly shop, or you can go to Walmart. Go to Walmart, spend the $20 and get back to fishing. You'll be okay. And you'll probably say, this thing's pretty cheap, but it did just fine for most of my needs. Now, you forget everything. That's a completely different story. But then you'd have an opportunity to write that article that I've been wanting to write of only using stuff from Walmart to go fly fishing. So that's the first thing. Don't feel ashamed about going and getting your emergency stuff there. You're not losing your fly fishing cred. I think even the guys at the fly shop will be okay with you doing that in a pinch. So that's the first thing. Secondly, this is a great way if you are on a very limited budget, if you are just getting into fly fishing, to kind of round out the stuff that you think you might need. I mean, you can go in and you can touch the stuff. It's not that dissimilar to buying things on Amazon. I know a lot of people buy fly fishing gear on Amazon and stuff that has names that sound like it's a heritage fly fishing brand, but really it's some Chinese import that they just made to look like it is a heritage fly fishing brand. Well, with Walmart or wherever, you can go in and see this stuff and touch it, and you can really, get the things that you need to start fly fishing, and you can touch it and see. You can see what the difference between a size 6 and a size 8 is, which you can't necessarily do online. You can see the difference between maybe the 3 and 4 weight rod and the 5 and 6 weight rod. Not every Walmart's going to have multiple choices on fly rod combos, but it at least gives you a tactile, tangible way to make that decision. The third thing that I would say is that it is not a bad idea to have a backup or to have something to let somebody else use. And this would be a great, easy way to do it. Now, I've got enough fly rods where I don't need to go out and buy a $20 combo for my kids to use. But if I had a beach house and people were coming over all the time to use stuff, and I was fly fishing and people would want to do that, I would maybe go out and grab one and throw it in the on the dock and leave it there. And if anybody wanted to use it, then they could use it. And there's a very good chance it's going to last a long time because it's probably all plastic and various forms of plastic. So it's probably okay for that thing to sit outside for a long, long time. So again, you look over the breadth and the scope of casting across, and there's one thing that you'll see. That is, I have a strong affinity for good gear and taking care of your stuff and the benefits that come with using really, really good gear. But what I want to be very clear about is that perspective should not be held nor taken to the detriment of understanding there is a time and a place for incredibly low-end budget gear, because as I've said a few times, people use it, people fish with it, people enjoy it in the same way that you and I might enjoy a really high-end piece of equipment. So a couple things. First of all, is there something you fish that's like your guilty pleasure? Do you fish with something that was super duper cheap? You bought on Amazon, you bought at Walmart, it's absolutely bargain basement, not because it's on sale, but because it is cheap, inexpensive and cheap. But you use it and it is totally fine and it makes you happy. I would love to know what that is. I'd be happy to put a link to it. I'm casting across on an upcoming episode. But inevitably, once you do that, then it becomes rare and prized and sought after. But I would love to know what that is, just because I think it would be encouraging to people who sometimes get that perspective and get that opinion within the fly fishing world that you need to buy the nicest stuff. You need the $75 nippers. You need the $250 sunglasses. You need the $150 line. You need the 3 pairs of wading boots, each one costing $200. And that's, although there may be a time and place for that, it's certainly not necessary. So do let me know if you have something that you really enjoy using. This week on castingacross.com, the first article is called 5 Thoughts for Wader Storage. I've been wanting to do this article for a long time, and I'm actually going to do a video, I think, if I get the time, now that my garage is a little bit cleaner in my newer home. And what I have noticed, and when I talk to people in fly fishing and in hunting, is that people's waders die all the time. I have never had a pair of waders fail. And you might say, "Oh, you're not fishing hard enough." I am a little bit careful in how I fish, particularly how I wade. But I'm also relatively fleet of foot, so I credit myself for that. But a lot of people's waders don't die that I know while they're out on the trail. I'm not seeing people wipe out. I'm not seeing people do the splits. I'm not seeing people, kick barbed wire fences. A lot of people have dry rot issues. A lot of people have critters that chew holes. A lot of people have just random phantom holes that weren't there in the fall and then they show up in the spring. And I'm convinced because things are kept in places where critters can get to it. Things are kept in a way that moisture can accumulate, and things are kept in a way where the weight or the storage of the material actually will induce some sort of failure. So in this article, I talk about 5 things that I have done that have worked so far for me. I've not had a piece of gear fail on me. So definitely check the article out. I think it's some really good stuff. And like I said, I'd like to do a video sometime in the future kind of showing some of those techniques. And then a similar article, it's called Outdoor Clothing, When to Pitch It. This came on Wednesday, and so there's a big pile of socks. And I actually have quite a few sock-focused articles on Casting Across because socks are one of those unsung heroes of the fly fishers equipment. Good socks mean good feet, as well as good wading boots. And here I talk about how just because you spend a lot of money on something, if you use it hard, it's not going to last forever. So a great example is I like Smart Wool stuff. I think Smart Wool is a really, really good products, both in their socks, first and foremost, as well as their other clothing. But just because it's like some of the nicest wool socks you can buy that are designed for hard use in outdoor settings doesn't mean they're not going to wear out. So I've got a couple of pairs that are pretty old. And if I feel the heel and I feel under the ball of my foot compared to the top of the foot, I feel the ankle compared to like halfway up the calf, that fabric has thinned out significantly. Now, they're still great socks for mowing the lawn in and kicking around the house in the wintertime, but they are no longer those high-performing socks that are going to give me the wicking, warming, cushioned comfort that they gave me when I started off. Thankfully, when you get to be of a certain age, getting new socks for birthdays and Christmas is about as exciting as it gets. So I would definitely check out that article and just a few ways to see, touch, and smell your equipment and figure out when it's time to start over. This week's recommendation on the podcast is Traver's Corners by Scott Waldie. Now, I've mentioned this book before, and I'll probably mention it again, but there is 3 books in the Traver's Corners series, and it's just a good, solid fly fishing story. It's the kind of book you can read a chapter here, read a chapter there, and although it is serialized, they go together. It's not the kind of thing that you are going to feel like you have to knock out in a relatively short amount of time. It's a kind of book you can leave on your nightstand and you can read a chapter and it might push you to read the next one, or you might be content to put it down for a couple of days. But 3 books, they're all great fun. And there is a human side to these stories that I think is sometimes missing in fly fishing books. So if you don't want like the personal memoir, the kind of the John Gierach wannabe kind of stuff, which hey, that's great. I mean, he's the top of the heap, right? But if you don't want that, you want more stories that have really good personal, sentimental. I think he would say his Waldy would say his books are sentimental, but it's just a good, fun read. I really enjoy them. There is an order to them, but Traver's Corners, classic stories about fly fishing in a small Montana town. Definitely worth checking out, and I will put a link to where you can pick that up. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll put a link to my review on the show notes to this podcast page over at castingacross.com. And at that link, you can then find another link to where you can pick that book up. But you know how to use Amazon. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast on iTunes. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.